Welcome everyone to this panel discussion around how to score high on a tech-based experience retail. I think we have a great group of panel members here, well accomplished in their own fields, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the session as I would also. I want to take this opportunity to introduce our panel members to you. Hari Vasudev, Country Head and SVP Technology, Walmart.
Thank you.
Raghu Krishnanda, CTO, Myntra. Nitin Chhabra, CEO, Ace Turtle. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Let me start off with you, Hari. The last 10 months or 9 to 10 months have had a huge change in the way in which we as consumers have behaved, and tech firms have also sort of reacted to it. What are the big challenges that you see in your role in terms of how retail is changing and how experience-based retail may be becoming more relevant?
Yeah, I think, Harsha, as you rightly pointed out, right, there's been a dramatic change in consumer behavior. Obviously, because of the pandemic and due to various lockdowns imposed across different countries, the entire shopping experience to a large extent has changed quite a bit. Right? And for us at Walmart, it was no different. We saw a lot of our consumers switch predominantly to an online way of shopping. And more shopping has become what we call omni-channel, meaning that more and more customers are shifted away from walking into the stores and they're doing their shopping mostly online. But at the same time, in many cases, it's not purely online anymore either. What they're doing is they're ordering online. They want things to be delivered home. In many cases, because it's for daily use items, they want it much faster. And so we have actually had to repurpose our existing stores to be able to ship from the stores to consumer homes. They want facilities such as being able to not go into the store, but just drive to the store and have things be brought out to the parking lot to their vehicles, or to do curbside pickup. They want to be able to return items that were delivered to them at home without having to go through the trouble of packaging it up and then going to a FedEx or a UPS or whatever, but rather just drop it off at the nearest Walmart store. So more and more, there's just a few examples that I called out, right? But fundamentally, we expect that the omni-channel way of shopping is going to not only continue, but accelerate, right? And the implications, therefore, for retailers is that they no longer have to think about it as online or offline, but really think about creating shopping experiences for customers when they want it, where they want it, how they want it, and how therefore should they be thinking about technology, about bringing in technology to bear so that you're able to create these very frictionless, very seamless shopping experiences.
Yeah, thanks, Hari. And Raghu, let me come to you. Obviously, Myntra, the fashion capital, as I would say, you would have had hopefully a different experience from what typically the Walmart merchandise would be. And fashion did, some categories have done, I'm sure, very well. Some categories have sort of not been able to. So some insights from you, in terms of how you saw the market shaping up, and then specifically with regard to Myntra itself.
Yeah, I would say the general trend has been pretty much similar to what Hari mentioned. So we certainly see a big shift in the consumer behavior towards online, and fashion industry is again no different. So the other trend that we see is like more and more shoppers coming in from tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? So the first time shoppers onto an e-commerce platform. So that's been another trend that we see. So this poses certain interesting challenges. So one is for the offline retailers. How do we get online, right? So this traditionally this has involved huge investments in technology, expertise, and so on. So this is where like the whole omni-channel aspect comes in a lot, becomes very, very important, right? So the consumers, we need to give the power in the hands of the consumers, where it is they who decide where they start their shopping journey and where they want to end it, right? So so that becomes imperative for offline. For online players such as Myntra, so the challenge here is on both sides. So how do we make sure that we address the needs states of the new to commerce shoppers, especially the T2, T3 customers. And then how do we try to recreate some of the offline experiences online, right? So this could be things such as, how do you kind of gain the trust of the consumer? So, the consumer is used to seeing, feeling, touching the product, and then buying it online in real time. So, how do we try to recreate some of those experiences? How do we address the language issues, right? And then there is shopping offline has the instant gratification. So how do we improve the speed aspect, for the online transactions or online shopping? So various aspects that we need to consider from an online player perspective.
Thank you, Raghu. Excellent to hear your thinking here. Nitin, you've sort of seen various firms in the marketplace, and of course they'll be large and organized, and some of them could be lesser organized. How do you see the trend? Do you see a difference in terms of how they've perceived things? How is it looking to you?
No, yeah, because we are different from the way, Hari and Raghu's organizations operate. We are enablers and we supply technology to large enterprises. And what I would say is that, pre-COVID, few brands had, gone down that path. But for a lot of them, we would get called before their board meetings. We were a boardroom discussion. And then post-pandemic, it actually became a reality. During pandemic, it became a reality. And the reality is, if you look at most of the industries in India, which were, still the pace of innovation was faster, retail was slow to adopt technology. And cracks, had started appearing in retail even before COVID. Because all of us, have been, associated with retail one way or the other. So retail had become very transactional, very non-personalized, and it was not experiential at all. It was lacking a lot of experience, which you would, as a consumer, would want retail to be. It had become very boring. If I just want to put it in a simple way, and what pandemic essentially did, that it acted as an accelerant of all these issues, which became even much profound. So as a result, suddenly everybody wanted to jump onto this. And I can share a stat with you. So we grew before pandemic to, if you look at it now, we grew 4.2x times, right? So for us, it was all about managing that scale, and of course, everybody wanted to go live the next day, right? And so we had those sets of challenges to say, okay, how do we make sure as many clients as possible go live as fast as possible? Because this was largely dependent on, for a lot of them, on their cash flow, because everything else was shut around them. And I think for us, it turned out to be a fantastic accelerant, for the business.
Nitin, thank you. Wonderful to hear that. Hari, coming back to you, as you painted a picture of the consumer and the tech landscape, what were some of the things that you as Walmart had to keep in mind, or perhaps some of the things which really sort of caught your eye when you implemented them? And if you could share a few nuggets there.
Yeah, I think, one thing I wanted to add, which I was just reminded of as Raghu and Nitin were talking about, is one part of it is obviously external facing, right? Meaning, what are we doing with the consumer as consumer behavior is changing? And another part for us, particularly given how globally distributed we are in this, the large workforce that we have, there was a lot of focus and emphasis on how do we enable our own associates to collaborate better, to really do things to meet the increasing consumer demand, whilst actually going to a whole new way of working, right? Largely working from home. All of our meetings are obviously, like everyone else, on Zoom. So for us, really, one of the key things we had to keep in mind as we really put forth new experiences for our customers and consumers during the pandemic was really how do we balance also the need to keep our own associates very safe, keep their health and well-being uppermost in our minds, right? I'll give you a couple of examples. One example was, I talked about how we put in place a mechanism to do much faster delivery of daily use items, right? Like hand sanitizers and masks and toilet paper and what have you. And so one of the things that we found out very quickly is that both for our customers as well as for our own associates, for the safety, they didn't want to be coming in contact with each other, right? So even when you go and deliver something at home, we introduced something called contactless delivery, which is the idea is that customers, when they order things in the app, would decide that to opt for contactless delivery. And what this typically meant is that the associates who did the actual delivery, the drivers were given notification that they should not try and attempt an in-person delivery, where they're handing the items to the customer, but rather just leave it at the doorstep and ring the bell and walk away. And these were specific instructions that were given to the drivers through the app that they use. But then, of course, you also wanted to make sure that we didn't have any issues with customer experience where someone leaves something on your porch or your front door. You come out later, open it up, and something is missing, and maybe either someone forgot to put it in there in the first place, or it's a potential for fraud and so on. Right? So what we had the drivers do is actually take a picture and upload it back to our backend. We would then do a quick scan and compare, and then we would notify the customer saying that your item is available. We can open the door and pick it up whenever you want. So if you think about it, it's a very simple concept, right? To be able to say that I can just do contactless delivery, but to be able to now actually do it at scale and to roll it out across our entire customer base and through our entire associate population who are out doing deliveries every day was obviously no mean task, right? Likewise, in the case of pharmacy, because access to pharmaceutical goods and customers were, especially in the early days of the pandemic, they were trying out many different medications and medicines and so on. There was always a worry that there would be panic buying. And so in many states in the US, they had imposed, just like in India, various kinds of caps on pricing of pharmacies to make sure that retailers are not engaging in price gouging, right? To put it very simply. And so we had to then make sure that we would actually have all of the associated software. We should keep appropriate records, make sure that we are actually tallying prices. We're keeping track of everything, both as a way to ensure that we're being fully compliant and we're ensuring that we're being extremely equitable with respect to our customers, but also as and when the government came back and wanted to look at those records, they would be available, right? So these are just simple examples that we had to do very quickly and at very large scale, right? At our scale, nothing is simple. When you have 200, 300 million touch points with customers every week, spread across 11,000 stores across the globe, the whole variety of things to keep in mind, because even though we are a conglomerate, every store operates within its own local environment. It's very much a part of the community that it's in. And so many a times, these things often have to also be tailored to suit local needs, local regulation, local compliance requirements, and so on. So those are just some examples of where, as associates, we had to come together while working remotely. Another simple example, just to round out, is, as Raghu can attest, we have these massive spikes during a holiday season, right? Just like Myntra does with its end of season sale. We have a similar thing where, during Thanksgiving, Cyber Monday, Black Friday, we see a massive spike in volumes, right? Now, normally during this time, it's all hands on deck. Everybody is actually across all of our locations. People are going into a network operations center. They are tracking every aspect of every system on a continuous basis. But of course, there was no possibility for us to actually congregate in the office to get into a network operations center or a common location. And everything had to be done through Zoom, right? So just ensuring that core infrastructure that we use can scale for our needs globally is highly available. Simple things like access to VPN is continuously available, that people can actually get on a conference call or a Zoom meeting very quickly and troubleshoot things while still working remotely and virtually was another important aspect for us. And it's a really a huge call out on the hard work of all of our associates that we had a spectacular holiday season that was flawless from the customer's perspective, while still keeping all of our associates and everyone across the globe safe and healthy at the same time.
Hari, thank you. Very simplistically and nicely put from your side. Super examples. Nitin, let me come to you before I go to Raghu. What are some of the examples you saw? I would say, let's say the smaller order firm which you were trying to enable, which could be interesting to the audience.
Yeah, so I think one challenge which we definitely faced and was interesting was, for us, it's very important to get a single view of inventory. And we need, a picture which is as close to real time as possible, because we move, inventory seamlessly from where the demand is getting generated, right? So the demand could come from one channel, it moves to other channels. So there were two challenges which we faced. One was, I would say that, one is the legacy system, which is understandable, right? Because no one was predicting pandemic, and this happened too soon and too quickly for everybody to react. But that was expected. The second, I would say, was largely on the legacy organization structure. Or maybe legacy not the right word. I would say the traditional organization structure, how brands or retail was organized. So typically, if you look at from a brand perspective, how it's a very siloed organization. So they would have a retail team, and they would have a wholesale team. Then they would have a departmental store team, and then now they had an e-commerce team as well. And each of these teams operate in silos. And essentially, where we come in and what Holy Channel is all about, that demand will get generated in one channel and you're fulfilling from some other channel. So I think these were some of the challenges which the CEOs had to figure out on the organization structures, etc. So I think so that was something very interesting for us to figure out. And we during this time we were fortunate. We were working already on a product which was around mobile checkouts. And when this happened, we quickly I would say pivoted that to a more of a contactless commerce piece, because we realized that the customers now even they want to be safe, Hari was mentioning, even the store associates, the delivery associates wanted to be safe. So I think that product helped us where the entire journey. So what we did was we brought in the nearby store to the customer itself, and they could actually see that on their own on WhatsApp. So the discovery was happening online, the transaction was happening online, and there were some interesting learnings also there, because typically, when you are enabling a web shop, your thing is you want to show, a large catalog, and there is a typical way, a customer goes through the funnel. But in case of WhatsApp, we realized that, the journey was very different. On WhatsApp, customer wanted to do everything very fast. So which essentially means you had to be very personalized, a very curated catalog you want to show him. So that his discovery is quicker, and he just, you push him down to the funnel faster, and the transaction also happens quickly. So I think interesting times. And what I'm glad about is that a lot of these things now are getting accelerated from a lot of the brands now. So a lot of them are now driving these, I would say, initiatives down to the wire in a much, I would say, a faster manner than it was happening pre-COVID.
Nitin, thank you so much, especially the WhatsApp example, again, a very, very relevant one as we look to scale. Raghu, certainly I'm sure you had equally interesting experiences or learnings in the pandemic, especially with a different category totally. I'm sure the audience will be really keen to hear some examples from you too.
Sure, yeah. So the first thing again was similar to what Hari and Nitin said. Focus on employee safety and customer safety. That was our first thing that we did. So for the customer safety, the whole contactless payments, contactless delivery, showing the temperatures of the delivery agents to reassure customers, things. On the employee side, yeah, so within our warehouses, the social distancing and all the other norms that we follow. And of course, all of us work from home. So we had 3 big events last year. And all of these were handled remotely and successfully. So yeah, so I think pretty much all companies have adapted really well to this whole virtual way of working, right? So that was on the what we did on the employee and customer side. On the product side, a couple of things that we did. One is the omni-channel thing that we talked about. We really expanded, doubled down big time on that. So we now have about 1,800 stores on the Myntra omni-channel network. 200 brands, right, across like 20 cities. So that's something that we've really expanded. This helped our brand partners, sellers tremendously when there was really like less or almost no footfalls in the stores. They were still able to sell merchandise through Myntra. So that's one thing that we did. We also rolled out a few interesting features. One is called, which is a studio, right? So which is basically our video and content platform. So what we saw is like people, customers are looking for inspiration to buy fashion. So now that is missing where they go to the stores. So how do we kind of try to recreate some of that? So we have a lot of fashion influencers in the country signed up on our studio platform. So where they actually showcase some of the products, on the platform, right? So this is through like articles, through images and videos, and whatever that they show is actually something shoppable on Myntra. So that way there's a direct connect, to what what the customer is seeing. So this has been pretty successful. So we see a lot of repeat users. In fact, 65% repeat users coming on to Studio. So they're pretty engaged with the platform. So these are a couple of things that we did. We also double down on adding more games. So we have some games which are kind of relevant to shopping and so on our platform. So this is to keep the customer engaged. So some fitness related stuff. So encourage fitness, how they can do some of those activities, and those step counts add to the points, loyalty points, which you can then redeem on Myntra. So these are some of the things that we actually did during the pandemic and right after.
Raghu, thanks a lot. Really liked your examples towards the end, especially around how you kept the consumer engaged. So wonderful ones. Thank you. Hari, back to you. The question now is about, as we look forward and as we look back, I don't think any of us expected this kind of a pandemic to hit us. And of course, all of us, you've given wonderful examples as to how you upgraded, got to speed, technology became much more relevant, experience became much more relevant. But if you look, let's say over the next 5 years, 7 years, what do you think are things that you've tried to put in place which are more long-term? Because everything will not have an immediate. So anything which you're putting in place, which let's say over the next 5, 7 years will be good foundations and should be adopted by other people in terms of us thinking construct, I would say.
So I think obviously, like many other retailers and other companies in general, right? For us also, there's a huge focus on using data better. And particularly at our scale, the use of data to create better experiences for our customers, to be able to allow better and more efficient decision making within the enterprise itself, right? I mean, we have more associates working for us than many companies have customers, right? We have 2 million people across the globe working for us. And how do we create even enterprise level systems that can actually take care of those associates in the most effective, efficient way and ensure that they're being as productive? So we employ data pretty effectively across the organization to make what we call data-driven decision making, right? And that will allow us to not only bend the cost curve within technology, which then can be passed on to the consumers through price breaks, but it will also allow us to bend the cost curve for the rest of the enterprise so that every action within the enterprise is that much more productive, that much more efficient. The second thing that we're doing, right, is really around associated with the use of data. There's a lot of concern, obviously, around how do these algorithms really work, right? And how do we ensure that there is an appropriate level of transparency, fairness in the algorithms, that they are equitable in nature and they're not increasing disparity, but are used to close disparity as much as possible, right? So we're starting to think about that. It's very early days, obviously. And then, of course, from an AI and ML perspective, we are employing AI and ML today across every part of our enterprise, whether it is in creating experiences for our customers, whether it is in the supply chain, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the examples there, or whether it's in store operations or in the way we interact with the suppliers and our partners and the marketplace sellers. A couple of quick examples, right? So in our online grocery experience, typical way it works is that you order groceries online, and then we have associates in the store who pick the groceries, have it be ready in the back room. And then when you drive in through geo detection, we know that you're there. The associate will bring your order outside, load up the trunk of your car, and you're off and on your way, right? So the entire thing will take less than 2 to 3 minutes from the time you drive into the parking lot to the time you leave. And of course, the challenge is that many times, as the associates are going around the store picking the items in your order, there is a challenge that sometimes we're out of stock, right, on a particular item. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does happen. And when that happens, the question is, okay, how do we react to that? Right? We can either just say, okay, we are not going to fulfill that item. But of course, that means that you as a consumer have to now you have to now figure out how to get that particular item, right? The second is we can call you and say, hey, this item is out of stock. can we substitute? That's obviously a huge disturbance for you because we're going to call you each time we run out of something, or or even maybe we are not able to get in touch with you because you're busy, you're in a meeting or something. So we have something called smart substitution, and the idea is very simple. Right? We use all the data that we have about not just you, but also about the affinity of other customers who shop for similar things, and what is the what are the other brands in that particular category or particular item that have a high degree of affinity, but also are close in terms of price, right? Because we don't want to always substitute something with a cheaper item, because then you will think that we're trying to actually skim, money of your order. And so we have various techniques that we employ, and we have created essentially a mechanism to be able to finally arrive at what is the best substitute for you as a customer personally at your level for this particular item. And then we make a substitution. And the good news is that, we have seen a very, very high level of uptake on that, because what we do is we substitute, when the associate goes out to deliver the order into the parking lot, he informs the customer saying that, these particular items are not available in your order and we have substituted them with these other items. And at that point, the customer has the option of saying, okay, no, I don't want the substitution. And, in this case, we will just refund them the appropriate money. What we have seen is a very, very high level of acceptance of the substitutions, right, which indicates that our algorithms are learning and working and getting better and better. Another example is around IoT. Obviously, we all are familiar with the concept of IoT, and we have these devices that are now getting ubiquitous across the supply chain, across the stores. And they're generating massive volumes of data, right? And we use data being generated by these IoT devices in our stores to actually start to figure out how best to optimize energy consumption in the store, right? So how can we actually ensure that, the temperature is maintained absolutely at the right level in our freezers? If the temperatures has to go up or down too much, how do we take preventive action so that goods don't spoil? At the same time, ensuring that we are optimizing for energy consumption, because obviously at our scale, again, sustainability is a very important area of focus for us. We not only want to get to carbon neutrality, but we actually want to be regenerative with the environment. And we have announced several measures in that regard. And we're starting to employ technology through IoT devices in our stores, in our supply chain, but also doing, after the fact analytics and analysis based on the data that we collect, to then fine tune the operation of these devices so that they are not only working at their optimal best, but they're also over time reducing the energy footprint and the consumption, so that we then are able to do our business a lot more sustainably than we do today.
Very wonderful set of examples, AI, ML, and practical ones. Thanks once again. Nitin, as you look to sort of take your company forward from the 4X number, what I heard you talking about, what are some of the things that you are trying to put in place in your firm as you sort of look for the next way over the next few years? And what are things which I guess companies should look out for in terms of how they invest over the next few years, maybe 5 odd years?
So we are actually going deeper, and we think there is a lot of scope for embedded analytics, because in retail, the earlier avatar of analytics products for most retailers did not give them the desired ROI, because retail is a very bandwidth choking business, and the earlier tools which would use the data and throw up the insight, and would the user would be expected to use that insight to and take an action. So that wasn't happening in the desired time frame. So what we feel is that if we can use the same data, and we've already started doing some POCs around that, is that if we use that data through the power of AI, and we actually execute the task for the user. So that's where we are going deeper, because we get inventory, catalog, fulfillment data in real time. And that's really rich commerce data, it's gold. So we're going to go deeper into embedded analytics. And I think where, the user, actually the task is done for the user, and that's where the automation completes the full loop. I think that's where we're going to go much deeper going forward.
Nitin, thank you. Good to hear that. And Raghu, coming to you, of course, very keen to hear the long-term investments, the long-term trends that you adopted in your firm over the current period, and how they would impact the longer term. And of course, lastly but not least, some closing comments before I sort of hand over to the audience once again.
Sure. Yeah. So we're doing a few things and thinking from keeping the long-term view. So first one is personalization. Hari touched upon that. So this is again super important. So again, if you think about it, if somebody goes to a store, what he or she sees is what the salesperson shows them, right? So it's like a limited set. So for instance, if you come to Myntra, there are about 900,000 styles on Myntra. So you can easily get overwhelmed with the choice right there. So it's very, very important that we show what we think is the right, selection for a user. So personalization using data, a lot of ML AI becomes super important. Another interesting and very unique problem specifically for the fashion industry is size and fit. So if you buy, let's say, a medium in Nike, so it doesn't mean that a medium in, let's say, Under Armour will suit you, right? So each one is a little different. So how do we kind of recommend the exact right size for you, right? So that you don't have to keep trying, returning, and so on and so forth. So that's again a challenge, a problem that we're trying to solve. So we made some headway into that. So we have a lot more things, planned to address that specific issue. Another one is, again, continuing the whole Omni journey. So this is something that is going to continue. So as I mentioned, really putting the power in the hands of the users. They let them decide where they want to start their shopping journey and where they want to end it. So really providing this whole harmonious online, offline, experience for the consumer. So a lot more things that we can do to make that customer journey really easy and seamless. Social commerce is another big area. So the various aspects to it, one is, the whole content side of things, talked about the video technology. So certainly want to do a lot more there on how we can enable influencers to be able to, promote products, both recorded, live, and so on and so forth, right? So that's something which we continue to do. How do you make it easy for users to share, with their family, with their friends, seek opinions on some things that they want to buy? So because, if you look at the, again, offline experience, shopping also has a huge social angle to it, a community angle to it. How do we try to recreate some of those experiences online? Another interesting aspect is virtual try-on, right? So how do you, enable consumers to be able to virtually try on products, whether it is like, let's say, beauty products. How does this lipstick look on me, or a mascara look on me, versus, and also how does this dress look on me, right? So how do we use AR, VR technology to enable this whole, virtual try-on experience? So, and then last but not the least, so this is something that we released it a couple of months ago, where we have a mall online, M-Mall. So again, going back to the trust factor. So we now have official brand stores of various brands present on Myntra. So it is similar to what Alibaba did with Tmall in China. So we have over 30 brands there. So here you're assured that this is the brand store that is, that you're shopping on. So if you have a favorite brand already in mind, you can pretty much go there and make your purchase. So these are some of the various things that we're planning to do in the near and medium term.
Thank you, Raghu. I think wonderful set of examples. With this, I think we come to the end of our panel discussion. I once again want to thank Hari, Raghu, Nitin for the wonderful discussion, embellished with examples throughout, which I'm sure the audience has enjoyed listening to. I've learned a lot today. So thanks once again for myself and the audience for being such wonderful panel members. Thank you.
Thank you, Harsha.